Let me tell you one of the craziest true crime stories I ever heard of while we burn some calories. Now, this story is about the murder of Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. So, Shannon was 21 and Christopher was 23. They're from Knoxville, Tennessee. On January 6, 2007, Shannon and Christopher had plans to go to a party at a friend's house. And then after the party, they were supposed to go to a dinner. So that afternoon, Shannon went to her friend's house to get ready for the party. Around 8, her friend left to go head out to the party, and she waited for Christopher to come pick her up. When he arrived, they walked through the apartment complex parking lot, but little did they know that they were being watched by some monsters. While they were standing close to Shannon's vehicle, they were carjacked by a group of horrible individuals that randomly decided to attack this couple and force them into the back of Shannon's SUV at gunpoint, tying both their hands behind their back, and took them to LaMarcus Davidson's house at 2316 Chipman Street. Both Shannon and Christopher were sexually assaulted inside of Davidson's house. Christopher was sexually assaulted with an object and by at least one of the murderers. He was then taken to the railroad tracks where he was forced to walk barefoot to a spot where they unalived him. Using a dog leash, they forced this man to walk to his own death. His hands were tied behind his back, and so were his feet. He was blindfolded and gagged with a sock, wearing nothing but a shirt and underwear. He was shot in his neck and back, but that did not kill him. They then shot this man in the back of his head, severing his brainstem. Then they wrapped him up, put him in a blanket, and set his body on fire. Now, Shannon was still alive. She was at LaMarcus's house on Chipman Street. She was being held hostage by the only female murderer, Vanessa Coleman. She held her hostage while the 4 other male murderers unalived Christopher. When they returned to the house, they beat and sexually assaulted Shannon some more, and then they bound her to a chair. They orally sexually assaulted her. She was beaten and kicked in the groin, and she suffered severe hemorrhaging. Now, Shannon was still alive. After all of this, she was still alive. These monsters poured bleach down her throat and scrubbed her entire body, including her private parts, in hopes that they would remove DNA from her body. They then covered her face with a trash bag, and she was tied up in a fetal position and placed in trash bags inside of a trash can in the kitchen. They covered it with sheets. Shannon died from suffocation. After placing her in the trash can, LaMarcus Davidson left to go spend time with his girlfriend and gifted her some of Shannon's stuff. Now, when neither Shannon nor Christopher showed up to the party, the friends got worried, of course, and they began to reach out. But of course, they didn't get any response. So 2 of Christopher's friends went back to the apartment where they had been kidnapped from, and that's where they saw Chris's truck. Chris's body was discovered by a railroad track employee around 12:20 p.m. on January 7th. Now, on January 7th, Shannon didn't answer the call from her mother or show up to work, so they got help from the mobile phone company. And that's when they found out that her cell phone pinged on Cherry Street. This is where the search party, family and friends, found her forerunner on Monday, January 8th, in an envelope that was left in the vehicle that had LaMarcus's fingerprints on it, leading them back to, of course, 2316 Chipman Street, 2 blocks from where they found her car. Now, of course, when they got to Chipman Street, nobody was there, but they did discover Shannon's body in the trash can. LaMarcus's fingerprints were on the trash bags and the box that the trash bags came in. His sperm was also found inside of her, and Latelvia's Cobbin's sperm was found in her mouth. They also located shell casings that matched the bullets that unalived Christopher. LaMarcus Davidson was arrested on January 11th in a vacant house with Christopher's shoes and a .22 cal revolver. Of course, LaMarcus tried to say that Latelvis Cobbins and George Thomas came to his house on Friday and Saturday. After carjacking 2 people, he claimed they were still in the vehicle. He said he never went past the living room and then used her car to go sell some drugs and wiped it clean. George Thomas, Latelvin Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman were arrested on January the 11th. At this point, now everybody was trying to blame it on everybody. Vanessa tried to say she was held hostage. They found a journal that was recovered after the arrest of Thomas, Cobbins, and Coleman, And the entry was from January 9th, and it said, "Last night was one of a kind. We stayed with a crackhead that is cool as hell. It snowed a little bit, but it's already melted. Let's talk about these adventures. I had one hell of an adventure since I've been in the big Tennessee. It's crazy world these days, but I love the fun adventures and lessons I've learned. This is going to be a long, interesting year." That does not sound like somebody who was held hostage. Vanessa's story went like this. She said LaMarcus Davidson and Eric Voigt carjacked two people and ordered Latavius to drive them back to Chipman Street. Latavius said that LaMarcus took the woman into the bedroom. Eric Voigt drove away with Chris, and then he tried to deny any sexual assault with Channon. Vanessa did admit to being in the house while all of this was going on, but again, she tried to say she was being held hostage. Needless to say, none of that held up in court. Eric Boyd was found guilty, receiving 18 years. Latavius Cobbins, guilty for unaliving Channon and Christopher. He received life without parole. LaMarcus Davidson, the ringleader, received the death penalty. George Thomas, life in prison, no parole. And Vanessa Coleman, the only female, received 53 years in prison. Of course, I believe that all of them should have gotten the death penalty, but we all know that's not how the law works. Rest in peace, Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom.